I love horror. Going back years and years, I can remember, I said in my Stay Away Camp review actually, I remember playing Resident Evil 2 on the N64 and it absolutely terrifying me when the hand grabs you through the window early on in the game. It was just a natural progression from movies into games. And having said, like I said, those barren years of being a Nintendo fan and not having many, to have this many all at once is a great thing.
Unlike Glenn, I do not like horror games at all, or at least I should say I didn't like horror games until Glenn popped up and went, oh, why don't you go and play Layers of Fear? And then I sat in bed, pretty much in tears for the next 2 nights. I freaking love Layers of Fear. So let's look at our top 5 Switch horror games. The first game in our top 5 horror games on Switch is the COMA RECUT. This game sees you playing as a student in a high school where things go a little bit wonky. Now, personally, I didn't find this game incredibly scary, but the storyline was well delivered and the cutscenes were interesting. The only problem here is what Glenn is about to tell you.
Yeah, so the main problem with this game is that it falls into the trap that quite a lot of horror games fall into, which is that once you've seen the monster and you get over the initial jump, it then turns up so often it becomes annoying. As Mark said, the story is interesting and I like the fact that it's a 2D horror game, which is something you don't see so much, but it just sells itself a bit too early in terms of showing its monster and it goes downhill a bit after that. So in at number 4 we have the perhaps unexpected The Long Reach. Now I'll admit I haven't actually played this one, so Mark, tell us what's so good about this game.
Cheers, Glenn. Yeah, I didn't really expect this to be a scary game at all, and unlike COMA, it doesn't reveal a monster that you have to run away from all the time. It's more the suspense of not knowing what's going on. So for me, this definitely deserves a place in a horror list and goes in straight to number 4. On to number 3 on our list, and now we get some of the big names that you're all going to be expecting, and the first of those is the hideous Outlast 2. Glenn, I know you've completed both these games and the DLC. Why is Outlast 2 in number 3?
Having finished Outlast 1 and the DLC as you've mentioned, I was massively hyped for Outlast 2.
In a word, Glenn, what is it about Outlast 2 that makes it scary for a new player? Imagine they hadn't played Outlast 1, step into the game, why am I going to play it?
Well, both the Outlast games, to be fair, just drop you into an environment that you're totally unused to and you have to survive, and that is pretty terrifying to begin with. Also, the game is much darker, visually, than the first game, and again, just being in the dark, everyone's afraid of the dark, aren't they, at some point?
He's looking down left. Be careful. Little hands, what you do. No! Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. There's a father up above, and he's looking down in love. So be careful, little mouth, what you say.
Hey, the outsider!
You're an absolute masochist, Glenn. I don't know why you do it to yourself. Okay, so that's our number 3 game. And that brings us on to number 2. Our number 2 is Outlast 1. Now, some of you might have been expecting this in the number 1 slot, but actually I think we got a bit of a surprise for you there. Outlast was a disgusting game for me to play, and finding myself in that insane asylum was, ugh, no thanks. Glenn, tell us why you liked this game.
Well, I first played this game on the PS4. It was actually one of the very first games I picked up once I bought the PS4. And when you first walk into that asylum, the first 25 minutes of that game are genuinely terrifying. Now, the reason I would put it at number 2 as opposed to number 1 is because similarly to the COMA, it just shows its hand a little too early. Now, there's not a monster as such in this game. You are just constantly being chased by the inmates. But once you've been chased a few times and you've hidden in a few lockers, it all becomes a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, fair play, Glenn. But even in the 10 or so minutes I ended up playing the first game for and sitting cowering in that locker, there is no two ways about it. This game is horrific. It's horrible. It's terrifying. So if that's what you're after, that's why it's number 2 in our list.
Also, the DLC, which is included in the Switch version, which is called Whistleblower, for me is actually scarier than the base game. It's absolutely terrifying.
But you can't make a deal if you've got nothing to bargain with. You gotta be inside the dream to buy it. You gotta have faith. And that's what I'm here for. To make you believe.
Brilliant. So that takes us on to our number 1 scariest game on the Nintendo Switch. And our number 1 is Layers of Fear. We both absolutely love this game. And you know what? For a horror game, it has an incredibly deep story, and it's really a well-delivered, well-paced horror.
Yeah, I agree with you. The biggest thing for me about why Layers of Fear is number 1 is because I felt uncomfortable every second I played this game. From minute 1 till finishing the game, this game made me feel horrible. And the reason for me that it does that is because there isn't a monster. You just experience the strange goings on of this house as you go along. You don't have to run, you don't have to hide, there's no fear of death, which might put some people off. But actually for me, it's not dying in a horror game that scares me, it's not knowing what's coming next. And I didn't know what was coming next in this game at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Glenn. And what was lovely was that when you complete the game, you have this almost new game plus mode that adds in some new story elements. The story's told through little leaflets, and you open drawers and find diary entries of your estranged wife where things have gone hideously wrong, and you only really uncover the story by spending your own time to read these. The game can sometimes feel a little slower than most horror games, but that's only to its credit. And like Glenn said, the psychological impact of a game that doesn't have a monster is much better than one that seems to just throw one in your face and keep throwing it.
One negative that could be labelled against the game is the fact that it uses so many jump scares, and it does. I mean, they're literally every 30 seconds, but they work. They absolutely work. They don't just make you jump, they make you feel scared as well. If they just made you jump, it would have worn off very, very quickly, but the fact they keep you on edge, for me, that's what a jump scare should be. A good jump scare is, that's what they do to you.
Okay, so you've heard our top 5 horror games on Nintendo Switch. What are your top 5? In fact, what's your top 1? Pop it down in the comments, let us know why, and as always, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see you on the next one.